Welcome back to Spin Magazine's Lip Service. I'm your host, Scott Lips. My next guest is the founding member of one of the best-selling rock bands in the world, The Police. He's sold over 75 million records, won 6 Grammy Awards, and has been inducted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. He is drummer Stewart Copeland, one of the greatest drummers to ever live. From songs like Every Breath You Take, Roxanne, Message in a Bottle, and many other timeless classic rock hits, even these days the band is getting more streams than Zeppelin and Pink Floyd on Spotify. He's a composer, conductor, author, and consistently sits on the top of the list of the greatest drummers of all time. Some say the top. He's had an interesting journey. We'll get into everything from the history of the Police to his latest book, the band's records, and many stories about Sting, Andy, and Stewart in the early days to his life now. Please welcome to the show, the one and the only, the legendary Stewart Copeland. Welcoming the one and only, legendary Stewart Copeland. Thanks for coming.
My pleasure.
I'm a bit out of breath because we ran up some stairs, but it's great to have you here. As a drummer, it's a pleasure to have you here, and I'm so excited to get into it. Lots to cover. Did you watch the Grammys? I don't know. There was some, sort of like the non-existent rock category on the Grammys. You won a bunch of Grammys between the Police and yourself. Do you have a thought process on like rock being non-existent in the Grammys?
Well, I don't know about that, but
Well, it's not televised.
There's best rock performance on a record. There's best record of a rock performance. And I didn't even know all the different categories there are. But you know, Grammy night is it's a night of great honor for some, but for 4/5 of the honorees, it is a great night of demotion. Because up until that day, you're nominated, which is cool. Right. And when you're nominated, you're walking on air. Your voice rings with more authority. People laugh at your jokes. Then, come Grammy night, you are demoted. You are no longer nominated. You was nominated. And your jokes aren't funny anymore.
But the fact that it's not even televised, the rock categories, I mean, years ago used to have, there was that one year where I think Jethro Tull beat Metallica, which was a strange year. But there's no...
That's an interesting contest.
It's very strange. But,
well, because both of them have their niche. Both of them have their reason for being honored in such a way for different reasons. And I'd guess put them both about equal. One of them probably more current than the other.
A friend of mine produced a Stones record, Andrew Watt, and he won for the record of the year, and it wasn't even televised. And I always thought, it's such a shame, because it used to be...
Well, that guy's a rock star. You should put a camera on him anyway, whether he wins or not.
But it used to be, it was all televised, and these days you can't even... I mean, it's non-existent when you watch this. So because you won some Grammys, I just thought you might have some thoughts on
Well, it's a great hang.
Yeah.
Most of the fun happens backstage, and the Grammy folks, very considerately, they have seat fillers. So that when you want to go out backstage and hang with Metallica, they have some person probably better dressed than you to fill your seats so they don't have empty seats. And it is a great hang because everybody's in a great mood, particularly if you win. The cool thing is to hopefully be on one of the early categories so they put you out of your misery sooner. And whatever your category is, and for the great, whatever the category is, and the winner is yourself. And so you get up there and you make a little speech, and then they hand you a Grammy, and then they escort you off the stage and they take it back.
And you don't get it.
No, you hand it right back to the nice lady who's wearing white gloves, and they wipe it down to get your fingerprints off it because they're going to hand it to the next person. And so
Did they send it to you? I mean, how do you get it?
Oh, later, yeah.
Oh, later, okay.
So you hand it back, and you keep walking. And then you do the Grammy social media camera. And you talk to them. And so how's it feel to win a Grammy? Well, it feels great. Then you move on to the newsroom. So how's it feel to win a Grammy? It feels great. And there's like 5 or 6 different photo shoots, social media things. So once you've won your Grammy, you've got like about another 45 minutes to an hour of stuff that you do backstage. And I always wonder, well, what if I'm up for another Grammy in 10 minutes? Well, I think they've probably got that figured out to get you back to your seat. But it's kind of a process after you win to go through all this stuff. And you're generally pretty compliant since you're in a very good mood having just won.
Of course. It's fascinating. 2003, you got inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Do those things mean a lot to you? Like, there's a lot of bands that don't get inducted. Foreigner, it took them like, I think 25, 30 years just to get inducted. Half the guys were dead at that point. I mean, does it mean a lot to you when you get these awards?
It's a weird thing, that one, because the award means a lot because the Stones, all of our forefathers, all the people that we respect succumbed to this event. However, the people who run it are idiots.
Right.
Actually, no, John Sykes, who runs it now, is probably doing a much better job. But when we won, it was just a horrible thing. It was an evening for the benefit of all the rich fat cats who buy and sell us musicians. And they're all sitting at the tables and at the what's the place? A fancy hotel.
Beverly Wilshire or something.
No, this is in New York City.
Oh, right, okay.
At a hotel ballroom where, $1,000 a plate.
Yeah.
Buy a table for $10,000. And by the way, the honorees, you get one ticket.
Right. You can't even bring your family.
Well, I've got 7 kids. And so that's sort of the vibe. And the nice lady on the phone says, look, we're giving you a nice hotel room.
That's it.
No dressing room for the band.
Yeah.
You are fodder for the fat cats. And the fat cats get up and make speeches about how much they love music. Bullshit. They buy and sell music like potatoes. And by the way, I say this with no bitterness in my heart, because without those assholes, I don't get no Lamborghini. Right. And so it's a symbiotic relationship. But that evening is kind of...
It's bittersweet in a way.
Well, yeah, because nowadays they do it at an arena for the fans. It's not for the fat cats, it's for the fans. Yeah. And it makes a lot more sense now. But when we did it, it was not a good thing. It's sort of fun, though, because, my band is dysfunctional, as everyone knows. We love each other, but we do not function. And so we play our song or two, however many songs we played. And old Stingo, he walks off stage left. And old Andy walks off stage right. And it's a very low stage. It's a cabaret. Right. It's a cabaret stage. And I walk off the front, and there's my I never saw the other 2 blonde heads for the rest of the evening. But, hey, there's the Clash. I went and hung out with the Clash instead. And AC/DC were there. It was kind of a fun evening anyway, even though the organizers of the night were committing crimes against artists.
I'm sure. And if you wanted to buy tickets for your family, it was probably, what, $3,000 a pop or something?
Oh, then it was $1,000 a plate. It might be more than that now. I don't. No, probably not. It's not a fancy dinner anymore. I believe it's an arena event where the punters, the folks who put us here, buy tickets and get to participate.
Crazy. Years ago, I had the pleasure of playing the Hollywood Bowl, and I didn't even get a ticket. I had to buy my parents tickets to sit on the grass, past the seats.
Who are you playing with?
Just Courtney Love with Lana Del Rey. We did a tour, and we got to play there.
I would have thought she would take care of her band.
I didn't, we were sort of the opening slot, and I didn't even get
There's
my
not much she could do if you're the opening act.
But when you have to buy tickets for your parents to come, it's always like anticlimactic.
Yeah, it takes some of the buzz out of it.
It does. There's lots to get into. You're doing a tour coming up, a spoken tour. You got a record coming out, actually April 15th, I believe.
April, whatever Earth
15th,
Day is.
16th?
April Earth Day.
Okay. But take me back to the beginning. You grew up, a lot of people don't know, your dad kind of was like a founding member of the CIA. You grew up in Virginia, but then you moved to the Middle East, Lebanon.
I was born in the suburb of the CIA, which is McLean, Virginia. And a couple months later, my daddy was away on business over in Egypt installing a dictator named Gamal Abdel Nasser, who was actually a very benign dictator. And he played the Russians off against the Americans, but unbeknownst to the non-aligned movement, Tito and Castro and all these other people who are kind of like, there was a Cold War going on, just to remind you. It's not like today. There was a Cold War going on. It was a struggle between East and West, framed as a struggle between free market economy and communism. No, it wasn't about, my father could give a rat's ass about spreading democracy or anything. It was the oil. End of story. And let the oil flow to the West, to our factories, rather than north, to the evil empire.
Always comes down to money, right?
Yep, and that's the game they were playing. And my father was a patriot working for the interests of the United States of America and to get that oil coming to us. And the Middle East at that time was or rather, to put it another way, the empires of that era were receding. After the Second World War, the British Empire just dissolved. The Ottoman Empire, all these different empires that had controlled these countries and lands dissolved. And so these countries and lands became independent. And they were all run by dictators. And it was just a question of their dictator or our dictator. The British, the French, and the Americans set up some monarchies. The Saudi Arabians, the Iraq had a king. Egypt had a king, Farouk. And it was King Farouk that my father helped to overthrow to install our dictator.
And when did you know your dad was in the CIA? I mean, it's not like, one of the rules of the CIA is probably don't tell anyone you're in the CIA. So when did you become known that he was actually part of that and a founding member?
I found out when I was in college in California in 1972 or 3, right at the nadir.
Before then, what did you think he did?
Oh, businessman.
Okay, just random businessman.
Well, in Beirut, Lebanon, at the American Community School in Beirut, ACS, everybody's dad was a spy. And if they weren't, they were bragging on pretending to be. Because Beirut, being the one Christian country in the Arab world on the cusp between the East and the West, was the place of all intrigue. And it's the place where the Saudi princes would come to gamble, womanize, and drink. And so it was a party town, but it was also where a lot of transactions were done. So that's why we were in Beirut for all that time. But I didn't know. I mean, my brother Miles comes home from school one day and says, "Dad, are you a spy?" To which my father responds, "Who wants to know?"
But he was a jazz musician, too.
Yeah, he was a jazz musician, too.
So,
and
trumpet player and spy.
You never really... my dad's a dad. He goes off to work every day. Doesn't your dad? What's your dad do? Yeah, well, he goes off to work every day. So I didn't find out about it till I was in college in California, right when Chile and the Allende crisis and the CIA's bad dealing in that sphere was very much on people's minds. So it was not a great prideful moment, but I thought, wait a minute. And people would ask me at that time, "What, your dad was, how can you love your father?" And I said, "Fuck off," because he's a great guy and he's a patriot and he's working for our country for the betterment of us. He actually, when he did retire, he moved to England, and we all moved to England when it got hot for us in Beirut, and he became known as the world's most public secret agent because he wrote books. He was on British television. They loved the British TV. The BBC used to love to have him on TV because he would say outrageous things.
Amazing.
For one time there was a scandal in England that America had been spying on British diplomats. And oh my goodness, this is terrible. This is terrible. Let's call Miles Copeland and see what he has to say about this. And he says, "Of course we're spying on you. What do you think? You're some country that doesn't matter? Of course. And by the way, if you're not spying on us, then you got to elect a new government."
Was he turning you on to Hendrix and Cream Earl? How did you discover some of those artists?
Oh, that was peer group. I was in a boarding school in the darkest Somerset, England, and a buddy of mine turned me on to Cream and Jimi Hendrix and such.
And was Mitch Mitchell one of your favorite drummers growing up? Yeah.
Top, first, number one. Him and, my father raised me to be a jazz musician, which is sort of why I don't do that much of it. I'm steeped in it, but of course I realize my current jazz chuckle buddies tell me that, "Stewart, you're raised on wrong jazz," which is to say white big band jazz. Woody Herman, Stan Kenton, and a Buddy Rich. The Buddy Rich stuck because he is absolutely the gold standard.
Definitely.
Never been superseded. Even Joey Jordison didn't get up to Buddy Rich standards. Yeah. He's still way up there. But for me, rock and roll, it was Mitch Mitchell and Ginger Baker.
And years later, I saw a clip where you got to perform with Ginger. A buddy of mine, Jay, actually directed that film, Beware Mr. Baker, where he hit him in the face with the cane. And,
yes.
It's great to see that you guys. I saw that clip the other day.
He wore that scar. He came over to show me the movie. And he still had the bandages. The scar was probably long gone, but it was like a badge of honor to have been smacked by Mr. Baker.
Not the nicest guy, Baker, right? I mean,
well, he was to me. A lot of people I meet in show business, we meet backstage. "How you doing?" "Oh, love your work. Nicest guy.
Yeah.
I can't name any names here, but there are people that I know that I meet are the nicest guy. And then it turns out they're not nice. We're nice to each other.
Yeah, sure.
So some people are not so nice to normal in their normal lives.
It's interesting. He came over your place and then he almost like had a heart attack or something when he was leaving your house, right?
Well, yeah, he came over to my place. I met him on the side of a polo field, of all things. And young man, that's what he calls me. Ginger can call me what? He can call me, hey, you, listen, pal, or just a finger on the shoulder, and I will respond respectfully to Mr. Baker. But we, got talking. We're both into horses and such. And he came over to my house and jammed. I got 1 minute of the mighty Ginger Baker.
Doing polyrhythms.
Yeah, I didn't, when I was at the moment, I didn't realize that he was playing in 6/8 or something. I was trying to, where's one? Right. And then he stood up and walked away. And and his daughter was there, and she called the ambulance. And within 20 minutes of that little clip. By the way, it's there on YouTube. Sacred Grove, Ginger Baker. Yeah. You can find it. And
do you think the playing gave him a heart attack or something? What was it? I mean, how did it?
I don't know. Maybe it was my little hi-hat pissed him off or something. I don't know. But anyhow, the ambulance folks came to check his heart out, and he was pretty grumpy about that. Oh, you did, and they come in. His daughter is trying to mollify him while they check him out, and they said, "Well, we got to get you. We should take you to the hospital." Fuck off! I ain't getting no fucking.
They always say, "Don't meet your idols," but in this case, I guess you got along with him, right?
In a way, that's sort of on what's written on the box. That's Mr. Baker.
Yeah. Take me back to Curved Air. I mean, one of your first bands, actually, Black Knights was sort of your first band, but Curved Air.
I'm not sure if it was the Black Knights or the Nomads, or it might have even been we had different names depending on which school party we were playing at.
Right. But Curved Air was sort of the first band you joined as the tour manager, and later on became the drummer.
Well, no. I guess my show business actual career, apart from playing at the American Beach Club in Beirut when I was 12, when I got to England and my brother Miles started. He began what became his music empire.
Of course.
I got my first jobs as roadieing for Wishbone Ash, for Renaissance, and worked my way up the hierarchy and ended up as a tour manager. So I knew all about how bands work, not just how to get a back line, 2-3 Marshall stacks and a drum set into the back of a Ford Transit van, but also where the money comes from, where it goes to, and band dynamics as well. I could see, since I'm not in the band, I could see who's the leader, who's the passenger, who's the captain, who's the soldier, and so I understood very much the dynamics of how bands work and how to get their gear on and off the stage and how to get the band in and out of the bus and onto stage. And eventually I was a tour manager, and Curved Air was a band that had hits long previously, but got a tax bill from Her Majesty's tax department. And to pay it off, they decided to do one more tour. And I got the gig as tour manager. And the tour went very well. And some of them wanted to continue, but the drummer, Florian Pilkington Mixer, independently wealthy, didn't want to. He's a good buddy of mine. And so, anyone know a drummer? Why, yes. And so I got the gig. But it could be said that I was the last rat to jump aboard the sinking ship. Right. It was over for not just Curved Air, but for all bands of that prog era. Soon to be replaced by the Sex Pistols.
Did you see the Sex Pistols perform? Because you were kind of hanging out in London at that point, right? Were you going to the clubs, and did you get to see them ever?
I was a member of one of the old wave, Curved Air, as this thing started happening. And it hit England very suddenly. One day on national television, one of the guys, I can't remember whether it was Paul or John, says the F word.
Right.
Live on national television. The country, it must have been a slow news week. The country went berserk. And all my musician friends hated this punk thing. It was the barbarians at the gate, destroying everything that, we were, by that time, rock music had become very noodly. Yeah. Very medieval, very triplets.
Very Jethro Tull.
Very Jethro Tull, in fact. Right. And very un-Metallica. And so there was, they regarded the punks as the barbarians. I was kind of intrigued because I kind of like energy, and I was an angry young man, and so the hostility suited me just fine. And my age group, and Sting is the same, we were too late to be proper hippies. That by the time we came of age, the whole hippie thing had gone rancid. And so the world was waiting for whatever comes next. And so we wanted to be whatever comes next.
And how did you meet Sting and Andy? I mean, ultimately, Andy wasn't the first guitar player you had in the band.
Well, I saw this new scene going on. I wanted to get me a band. I want my own band. One of the things I liked about this scene, unlike Curved Air, where we'd play shows and we'd make records, and I don't know where the money is, even though I'd been a tour manager. Now that I'm in the band, we get a salary, and it's kind of siloed experience. I wanted a do-it-yourself band where it's just us, no record company, no silo. We're on the streets doing it. And so I came up with the name. At first it was Fuck the Police. But sadly, I'm sorry to admit that I chickened out. And I wrote a manifesto, which I've still got. I check it every now and then.
Is that in the diaries?
It's adjacent to the diaries,
okay.
A separate document. And so it had to be a three-piece. Either the guitarist or the bass player needs to be able to sing, because I ain't doing no singing. I'm breathing too hard. I'm working back here. And so I remembered that a night off in Newcastle, a journalist had taken us to see the local happening band, the local pride of this sort of jazz prog band called Last Exit. And we went to see this band, and the band were good. But the bass player could sing. And that's cool. All right, that's reason. And I checked. Yep, he's got a nice old amp there too. He's got his own amp, and he can sing and play bass. So that's cool. I'm looking for one of them.
Right.
But then there was another factor, which was the golden ray of celestial light coming down from the heavens, alighting upon his magnificent brow. The guy just had, charisma out to here. Yeah. He can sing, he can play bass, he's got a pretty cool amp, but man, look at that charisma. And it seemed at the time that I was the only person who could see it. I mean, it's, looking at it now, what's the matter with everybody? Are they blind?
Although Sting's first band was a jazz band, right? The band
yeah.
Saw,
And before that, he played all the pop hits on cruises, right. Which is where he learned the craft of songwriting. And so a few weeks later, I call up the journalist and say, hey, look, that bass player in that band, you got his number. And I start telling him about this cool thing that's happening in London, this amazing new scene. It's called punk. The temperature dropped 20 degrees, right? Punk! Punk! No, he wouldn't give me the number. Oh, fuck. So I hang up and I'm walking around the circle. Then I came up with a much better, more persuasive argument for Phil Sutcliffe. And the argument went something along, give me his fucking number, okay? But fortunately, he didn't pick up. His girlfriend picked up. Oh, Phil's not here. Phil's gone out. Is there anything I can help you with? Oh, it's Stewart, whatever. I'm with the Curved Air. Curved Air. Oh, Phil loves Curved Air. Is there anything I can do? Well, there's that bass player in the band, Last Exit. Sting. Oh, yeah. Have you got his number? Oh, well, let me see if Phil's got it in his phone book. And I hear her go off, and she comes back. And yes, here it is. 371-0492.
Don't call that number.
By the way, that's still his number. So less than a minute later, I'm listening to that voice with which we are all now so familiar. And the first thing I said was, look, this is a conversation about just you, not your band. And he spoke the words, keep talking. And that had two things there. One is that, okay, he's a player. He's available. I can have him with that. And he wants to keep talking. I'm down in London. He's up in Newcastle. He wants to hit the big time. He's got some fast-talking, and I was a pretty fast-talking American, telling him about how, it's all going on. I got a scene. It's all going on. And the other part of the keep talking was that's what I had to keep doing for the next 2 years because we were starving. We were dead in the water. The critics spotted us as a fake bunch of carpetbaggers pretty soon. And
initially, you were writing all the songs yourself.
Yeah. Well, sort of. They're songs of convenience. I mean, right. I knew 4 chords on the guitar, which was one more than you need for punk.
Right.
And I just had these songs of utility, which are oh, I hate people. They hate me. And standard punk stuff. And the amazing thing is that Sting didn't run away because he actually does.
He stuck it out.
He stuck it out. Well, I kept talking, and we did have a thing. When he came over, a little while later, phone rings. It's Sting. I'm downstairs in a phone booth. weird how singers have really gravelly speaking voices. And come on up. So he did, and I had the gear there, and we jammed, and the rest is history. I mean, it was just one of those incredible. We realized this is, I was doing things I'd never done before, lighting up things that he'd never done before. Over the years, we very much grew apart. Those things that drew us together were the things that drove us apart musically. So we had a groove, and we got lots of gigs as a session.
Were you starting to listen to reggae at that point?
I was already into reggae. When I was in college in UC Berkeley, I was at the radio station, KALX, with 10 watts. I think we broadcast to about 4 blocks. But I was in charge of imports. And, I'm the boss jock on the boss radio station playing the boss tracks that my boss told me to play, was my calling thing.
Yeah.
And but I was in charge of imports, which meant English music and this reggae thing. Nobody knew how to categorize it, so I got a hold of it and immediately was taken by it. It didn't occur to me till later, but there was something about it which resonated and became my secret sauce. Going back a ways, Arabic music that I was surrounded, in the American and British kids, we were trying to be American and British. I'd never seen America since I was 2 months old, but I'm American, and and it was all about trying to be American and soaking up American culture wherever we could find it. Meanwhile, we are surrounded by this incredibly rich culture, which we're not paying much attention to, but is going into our DNA. And the music, Arabic music, the baladi rhythms, which basically just means country rhythms, and the dance, the debki, they have certain rhythmic features, such as that the important beat of the bar is the third beat of the bar, and they ignore one.
I was going to say there's no
3,
one.
4, 2, 3, 4, nothing, 3, 4, and then they have it check, check, check. Okay, this shares a fundamental foundation with reggae, which also emphasizes the third beat of the bar, ignores ones, and has those upchicks. And so when the reggae thing kind of took over the punk scene in London, the punks gots to chill. They come down off sniffing glue, and but there's no such thing as chill punk music. It's an oxymoron. So they would listen to hostile, dark dub reggae, which was suitably hostile, but chill.
There was Don Letts.
Don Letts was the DJ who was responsible for introducing all the punk rockers.
Yeah.
And there was old, Terry Chimes and the rest
Clash
of them. All of us listening to those. What the hey are they doing? And they listened, and I did too, listened slavishly to figure out what the Jamaicans were doing. But I could immediately, it just came real easy to me because of my Arabic. The Arabic music that was in my DNA, and I just found it really easy. I kind of got the drift of it, but then I could do my own thing with it. Like all the Police tracks that are reggae-ish are not reggae. They emphasize the third beat of the bar, and it's more of an Arabic thing. Some of them are classic reggae. One of them, maybe Walking on the Moon or something, is actually a reggae thing, but mostly it's reggae adjacent. Which is not. I have to hasten to add, though, that I do owe a lot to Aston Barrett and those Jamaican cats. Definitely, big deal for me.
Because lots of drummers would have approached those songs on the 2 and the 4 and playing it like a typical rock or pop song, but you kind of inverted the beat, and that became your signature in a way.
Yeah, secret sauce.
Yeah. So talk to me about kind of walking.
By the way, for any drummers out there who want to get on the front cover of Drum World magazine, I moved the beat 1 beat to the right.
Right.
1 beat to the left is still available.
Yeah. Early on, you formed this kind of solo thing called Clark Kent, where you played all the instruments. I think you guys had your first TV appearance with the rest of the band were in like gorilla masks and whatnot. And that was your first taste of like being in the limelight. It wasn't with the Police, actually. It was with your sort of pseudo name, Clark Kent.
At that time, the Police was dead in the water. I just had these songs that I recorded myself, and by some miracle, BBC Radio 1 added it to the playlist, equals hit. Not a huge hit, but something. And it was enough to get us on national TV on Top of the Pops. And the gimmick was that it was a secret identity. Nobody knew who Clark Kent. Who's Clark Kent was the question being asked by all of London for about 20 minutes. Who is Clark Kent? Is it Frank Zappa? David Bowie, Susie Quattro, who is Clark Kent? And I got airplay and was having a little hit, and we got invited to play on Top of the Pops. And but I didn't want to be a solo guy. It's not my thing. I'm a band guy. I like being in a band, and so I called up my chuckle buddies and said, pretended to be a band. And so to this day, I derive great joy. And in fact, where's Sting's phone? I just told you a minute ago. I got to call him up and remind him, because it's been at least 3 days since I've reminded him that, dude, your first time on national TV was miming
to me.
My bass line wearing a gorilla mask, okay? All right, you're picking up the check.
Because initially...
Actually, he did get, and he has picked up the check, so to speak.
Initially, the Police were signed to singles, right? It wasn't really a full record deal with A&M?
Yeah, they took a punt on Roxanne. They heard in Roxanne, they thought, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Let's sign them for a single. And it came and went, disappeared without a trace. BBC didn't get on. By some miracle, it did not get on their playlist. And we took that to be banned by the BBC because it's about a prostitute. And we waved that flag to see how far that would get us. And then they released Can't Stand Losing You. One off, sank without a trace. Then So Lonely, sank without a trace. And then Clark Kent comes along and has a hit. So they figure, oh, well, we better sign this guy and his band. And that's when they made an album deal for the Police.
And a lot of people would be surprised to know you actually hate drum solos.
No, I don't hate them.
Or I don't like drum solos. Like, whenever I've gotten put on the spot, I'm terrible at them.
Oh,
but
playing them.
Yeah, playing them. I mean,
I go watch Danny Carey all night. Neil Peart. Oh, yeah, that's a show.
But yourself, I mean, actually performing drum solos yourself, right?
Not real. Well, I'm very busy. I'm already playing a solo. Just for the rest of the band to shut up for a minute is the only difference.
Is there one performance when you think back on those 5 records you made with the Police that you're the most proud of? In terms of, is it Spirits in the Material World? Is there one song that you think, this is my best performance?
I would usually go to maybe Message in a Bottle or Can't Stand Losing You. Every little thing she does is magic. I'm proud of that. And the fun thing about that performance is that it was one of those cases where Sting brought in a demo, and the demo was a hit. With or without Andy and me, even with a drum box, it's a hit. Just release this, it's a hit, Killer song. And we tried the reggae version, the jazz version, the punk version, the Afro version, the every different version. None of them, every different version we tried was less than the demo.
Right.
And getting grumpier and grumpier about that. God. So one morning I come in there and probably over caffeinated, and okay, just play your darn demo, and I'll just flag me through the changes, and I'll just play to your damn demo, and just to prove to you how that's not going to work. And so I'm all grumpy, and he's standing over me, and he's pretty grumpy too. And okay, we start the track, and I hammer through the track like that, and just pretty much in a towering rage by the time we get to the end of it. Well, the song goes, every little thing she does is and that was one take, and that's the record.
So most of those takes early on were sort of first takes, because you never really had a chance to prepare, right?
Well, first, second, or third take, because old Stingo had a great technique. And any of you band members out there listening, take note. He would only reveal his songs on an as-needed basis, which was always. But we'd hear them one at a time, and he'd pull out a song, we'd record it. Okay.
That's it.
Have you got another one? And yes, he does. And so he would pull out the song, and we'd hear his demo. But by after 2 or 3 albums, we all each had our own recording studios at home, and he would start showing Andy the chords. And while he's showing Andy the chords, I'm kind of listening in and tapping my knees and thinking, what's going to work with that? Okay, let's do a take. And the drums for the last 2 albums, the drums were in a separate building. And because the sound was really great in the dining hall. And so they're set up in the dining hall, they're in the recording studio. And I'd go up there, and we play the song once, and maybe it's a bit scrappy, didn't quite make the change. We play it again. Usually it was about the second take is it. So those drums that you hear on those Police albums were created utterly spontaneously about 20 minutes after hearing the song for the first time.
Amazing.
They're completely off the cuff. And if ever I get depressed and feeling the lowness of my self-worth, I can always go on YouTube and type in Stewart Copeland's 10 best drum fills. And there are people out there, God bless them. I don't mean any disrespect, even though I'm laughing at their expense. And they're out there analyzing all this stuff. Well, Copeland introduced them. Guys, I made it up on the spot.
When you listen back on some of those records, are there things that you would have done differently now that you've sat with those records for many, many years and played those songs for many years?
Mostly I can live with it. There's one time at the end of Message in a Bottle, there's some drum overdubs that I regret. And usually Andy Summers, our guitarist, was quality control, bullshit control. And usually he was like, hey, you just ruined the track. Come on, hey, cut. But he must have been in the swimming pool. He must have been out, for some reason. I overdubbed these extra drum hits just to keep it rocking. Because Sting used to love to play the intro out forever, sending out, and 20 minutes go by, he's still sending out an SOS. So to keep it, I sort of added some stuff.
Yeah.
And I regret them. Where was Andy when I needed him?
A lot of people don't know. A lot of drummers become managers or they work at labels because they have to become useful, right? If they don't write the songs.
Yeah.
You were writing the songs early on, but early on you were actually calling some of the record stores to carry your records. You sort of become the de facto manager.
Oh, I was the
on.
de facto manager.
Yeah.
I eventually became not the manager.
Right.
I was managing from the start.
Talk to me about those early
Well,
years.
using my brother's Rolodex and his office and his phone lines, he was very generously not only gave me my first jobs as roadie and everything, but also when I had my own band, I could use his resources, his Rolodex mainly, and I would call the record stores and sell them boxes of 25.
Were you selling Roxanne? Like, what were you calling them?
No, I was selling Fallout.
Fallout, okay.
Which was my own song, which we'd recorded. And I'd call up the record store in Birmingham, and they would say, is it punk? Yes. Okay, has it got a picture sleeve? Yes. Is it hostile? Yes. Okay, I'll take a box of 25.
That's it.
And because the record stores, they'd be up there, and Curved Air ain't selling.
Right.
But these weird-looking kids with spiked-out hair would come into the store and say, where's the punk? And he would point them to the punk rack. And none of it's getting played on the radio. So they're not hearing any of it, but it's punk. And they look at the picture disc and they see that the spiked out hair and a hostile look, and they buy it. Pretty much on spec because they haven't heard it on the radio. And the first royalties I ever made was from the first Police singles. Before we had a record deal, it was my record company, Illegal Records. And I designed the label and I designed the picture disc and everything with Letraset. Some of your listeners might remember what Letraset is.
Yep.
But I designed the artwork and and sold the records. And for cash money that I was able to divide with the band, which I Curved Air. I never saw any royalties.
Yeah.
It all went into the maw of the industry. But here, I'd sell a box of records, I'd get cash money. And I was able to actually divide it up between the three of us.
Those early gigs were paying you, what, like 30 pounds a gig or something?
Yeah, 30 quid. Truck cost 7 quid. The PA, we'd have to bring our own PA for 12 quid. And I've got all these notes that I kept, the diaries at the time, how much we got paid, how many people showed up. I even reviewed, I gave us a 5-star review, generally pretty generous on the old reviews there, but were mostly about how I felt about the gig, which was different from how the audience responded to the gig. Two very different things.
It's amazing that you kept these diaries from early on. When you look back on them, do you think to yourself, like, I'm so happy I did that? And even the reviews, do you think the reviews are accurate this day when you think about it?
I was easier. I gave the Police better reviews than I gave Curved Air. Right. But yeah, I'm a keeper. I've still got my first guitar. I've still got, my manifesto. I've still got those diaries. And I made them into a book called Stewart Copeland's Police Diaries, which is in its second print now. And it's got those pages with my current thinking about them.
And 2 years into the band's career, you end up coming to America. Talk to me about those early days when you first got here. Because I think it cost you something like $300 a day to just stay afloat to play in America, right? You had never been to America with the band before at that point.
Well, my other brother, Ian, who is an agent, he went to Vietnam, came home from Vietnam just as Miles was setting up his empire, and Miles put him on the phone to book the band into dates. And with his American accent, Army lingo, he was just the coolest. It was the same when we were in school. He was the coolest kid on campus.
Yeah.
And so he was booking the dates. And he moved to America just after the punk thing broke, and created a circuit there. You know, and you go to Philadelphia, and he'd see there'd be some weird looking kid, not a hippie. Hey, where do you hang out? Well, we haven't got anywhere to hang out. And so he would go and find a club. I think in Philadelphia it was Grendel's Lyre, maybe. And what are you doing on Thursday? Well, I got nothing on Thursdays. Well, how about you make that punk night? Well, what's punk? It's the British invasion. Oh, okay, I got nothing else going Thursday. It's a dead night. Okay, try your punk thing. And it would be packed. And in Boston, the Rat Club, New York, CBGB's. And
you played CBGB's.
Yeah, that was our first gig in America.
Amazing.
And so he created the first band on the scene. He created the circuit of you go from Philadelphia to the next town to the next town. And the first band was Squeeze, known in America as UK Squeeze. And he had a station wagon with a back line in it, amps. I brought my own drums, but basically a station wagon with a back line in it. And Squeeze finished their tour, went back to England, and the police arrived, got into that same station wagon with that same back line, and went and played those same clubs. And he created a circuit which all these English bands were coming over and playing that circuit.
Your brother Miles is managing the band. Your other brother is booking the band. It's a family affair.
Well, when Clark Kent happened and A&M signed The Police as an album thing and started to take it seriously, that's when Miles became the manager. Up until that point, I was doing everything. But that's when, because Miles was hesitant because he had all these other bands that looked like nepotism.
Right.
And as soon as anything happens for this band, hey, you're just looking after your brother. So he was very, cognizant of that. And I had my own juice. I was doing it. But when it started to get serious, and I was kind of out of my league at that point. So that's when Miles became our manager.
Did you connect more with the band kind of concept because you grew up in this family of four and then now you have 7 kids?
Yeah. I'm the youngest.
Yeah.
I'm a band guy. Just put, just have me on the team, and I don't need to be the leader. I don't need to be the boss. I'm quite happy to just be on the team.
Yeah.
And at this point in my life, I tend to be the boss of everything.
What do you prefer?
I like it when other people are the boss, and
Yeah.
I just get to play. But in the work I do now, but it's only creatively, and the creative boss. But I'm happy to be on the team. And when Sting started to write hits, something happened in our relationship, which was that I'm no longer dragging him along, talking. No, it's going to be great. It's going to be great. We're taking over. It doesn't look like it, but we're taking over the world. Yep. It's going great, Stingo. Instead of all that, when we started to play his songs, and when Andy joined, and he started to hear his songs played with great talent, dexterity, knowledge, musicality, and we became actually a musical band rather than a punk band, Sting began to identify. And looking back at my diaries, I can see the transition was up until a certain point, all the set lists are in my handwriting.
And it's in his.
And then suddenly, at a certain point, the set list is in his handwriting. And by the way, I now notice that mostly those are his songs. And my feeling at the time was relief, because it meant I didn't have to drag him no more. It meant that he's invested in the band. He's now I'm not having to drag him along. He's now on it. He's now motivated. He's now driving. He's now full steam ahead, and I could relax a little bit.
Did he become less receptive to your input, like later on with some of the later records?
Yes. And it wasn't, Sting is on the spectrum.
Yeah.
And I say that as a compliment, because I just know, I don't know whether that's politically correct or not, but most of the really super talented people I know are on the spectrum. On the spectrum, I regard as a compliment.
I might be too.
Yeah, really. I aspire to be. But, music's really important.
Yeah.
And, his artistic solipsism is not his best feature of his nature. It just comes with the package. And he makes up for his lack of consideration for other people's art. It just doesn't work for him. He just doesn't hear it. He doesn't feel it. He's not being an asshole. He doesn't feel it. He likes his own songs. And by the way, so do I. So it actually works pretty well, except that more and more he would have a more complete vision of how the song should be. And that's just no fun for the rest of the guys in the band. I'm not a session player. I have no memory. I'll play the song 3 times and then lose interest unless we're in front of an audience. So it became more and more difficult for him to put up with the racket that I was making, the independent decisions that I was making about how to play my instrument. And and by the way, he's not wrong. He's pretty good at arranging for a band, and he knows how to use a drum set. And in fact, the times I needed to kill him most urgently was when he was right. He would come to me with some idea. I think you should play your hi-hat here. Well, fuck off. Actually, that's not a bad idea.
Because there's songs like Every Breath You Take. I've heard the story that you would argue about the placement of the bass drum for like weeks. Right?
Well, yeah, slightly. That one there, the drums were not performed. They were built.
Like a Linn drum?
Yeah, there was a Linn drum to begin with, and then we added this, and then we added that, and gradually replaced the Linn drum. The kick might be all that's left of the Linn drum, and because we got the snare sound was a gong drum and a snare hit together, and there's just enough gradation in the different hits so that it feels live. And then the hi-hat. We fought over the hi-hat. He wanted to use the Linn hi-hat, and I said, "God, can we have some life in this track?" And which brings me to another great debate and dispute between my beloved Sting and I, which is that he has this cockamamie notion, and he's actually right about this, that it has something to do with the song. And that the arrangement and the band are all there to serve the song. And the song is the reason we're all here. And fuck that. I'm here to bang shit. I bang stuff, and that's what I'm doing. The song is there to make me look cool. The song is in service of the band having a good time and playing something that's fun to play. And oh, by the way, you're not going to have any success in the world unless the song is a hit. But that's not why I play drums, not to serve the song. I look for great songs to serve me and that are fun for me to play with my friends. I'm there for the players, the other guys in the band, and for me, that's what music is for. But people who write songs tend to be singers, and singers tend to write songs, and they have this cockamamie idea that the song is the be-all and everything. And they're probably right.
Was there ever a moment where he turned around to you? Like, I remember a show that I played with Courtney when, I think the last show we played, she lost her voice, and she turned around to me and she said, "The drums, they're too loud." And she did one of these, and I didn't even know if I could keep playing anymore because she was making all these kind of hand
you've been
gestures.
fragged on stage.
Yeah.
Oh, I know what that feels like.
Yeah, so I'm assuming there was a lot of moments like that on stage where he would turn around to you, give you some kind of look of whatever.
A look? and he'd come over and start screaming
Right.
in front of in front of 80,000 people.
Exactly.
There was only 3 of us on stage, and 2 of them were screaming at each other. So one time in Turin, it was actually his birthday, and we're all very cheerful. We go on stage, and it's a crumbly old stadium in Torino, Italy. 80,000 people in there, excitable Italians. And Andy takes a solo. We're all feeling good. Andy, I'm a little excitable. Okay, Andy takes a solo. I get excited, and the tempo just drifted up half a notch, and then it drifted up another notch or 2, and by the time Sting comes back to sing his verse, I think it was "World is running down." When the world's running down, no, his lyrics. He thinks his lyrics are really important. I'm just banging shit back here. I don't know what he's singing about, but he's not a happy man. And he turns around, he's screaming at me for, being too fast. And this is in front of, a paying audience.
80,000.
Yeah. And he's like showing me where the backbeat is supposed to be by waving his hand, And surprisingly, this did very little to calm me down.
You played faster.
And pretty soon I'm in a towering rage, and I've got white balloons popping behind my eyeballs, and I'm just killing it. And my cymbals are plastered like that, and the drums sound like Dinky Donkey because I'm smacking them too hard. In my ears buds, my tech, Jeff, says, "Feeling a little happy tonight?" And I'm just screaming. And by the way, probably one of our best shows. The Italians went nuts for that. They could see what was going on. They were all for it. And we're screaming and raging at each other. And it was a heck of a show.
There's a moment in the Pink Pop Festival, I think, when Andy turns around to during Can't Stand Losing, and he's like, slow down.
Yeah, too fast.
Too fast. That's happened to me a bunch of times, I remember.
Hey, so shoot me. Shoot us. We bang shit. We carry the band down the road. And if the car is driving too fast for them, we'll fucking jump off.
Do you think the band ended too soon? You only did 5 records.
No, we ended just perfect.
Just perfect.
Yeah.
Because was there a time you actually ended at your peak, right? You were in Australia.
We actually did 1 or 2 albums more than I thought we would.
Really?
Because it got more and more difficult for Sting to deal with these independent thinkers when he has a pristine idea. And why do I have to negotiate? Why do I have to get through and, to get what I want? And of course, the guys in the band, that's me and Andy, or, speaking just for myself, is I'm not a session guy. I can't even remember what you told me 10 minutes ago. I'm just here having fun playing what I think is cool. And no, I'm not a session guy. I'll listen to your ideas and I'll try them out. Because he does have good ideas, but I don't have a lot of discipline. And my mind wanders. I'm probably too busy. I speed up. I got all kinds of. I would starve as a session player, and it drove him nuts. And got harder and harder for him to put up with it. And yet we got through Ghost in the Machine, which was really, really tense. And we even, we're going back to make another record, Synchronicity. But we did get to a point where we stopped dead and just couldn't move forward. We're just staring at the floor going, how can we even, we're dead in the water. And someone mentioned that, oh, by the way, George Martin's over there. The studio, this is on an island in the Caribbean, where there's this studio owned by George Martin, famously producer of the Beatles and composer of all that orchestral Beatles music.
One of the greatest.
For the one of your listeners who doesn't already know that. And he's in his plantation house just on the next hill. So we send Andy off. And he trudges down the mountain, crosses the creek at the bottom, trudges all the way up the other side to George Martin's place, and George Martin takes him in and sits him down, makes him a nice cup of tea. So, how can I help? And Andy says, "Well, we're dead in the water. The drummer, the bass player, guy, I'm there stuck on an island with 2 complete fucking assholes. We can't make whatever Andy's gripe was. I was not privy to it, but I could assume something to do with he's stuck with these 2 monsters, and we can't make the record. So please, Mr. George, would you come over and produce us?" And George wasn't born yesterday. He says, "Well, a very fancy way of saying, well, you know what? No. But I think, you know what? I think you lads can sort it out yourselves." And Andy hears these words of wisdom. Oh my God. Wow. Yeah. And he trudges down the mountain, crosses the creek at the bottom, trudges back up, guys, George Martin, he said, well, what did he say? He said, we can work it out ourselves. Whoa, he said that? That's what he said? My God, George Martin said we can, oh my God, okay, what's that song? Okay, Sting, what's that song? I love you, buddy. What's that song? Count it in, 3, 4, and we finished the record.
Amazing.
I mean, that is some serious high-level producing right there.
Definitely. When the band finally got back together in 2008, did the dynamic differ? Did it change?
No,
not at all. You were still
we thought it
at
would.
each other's throats at that point.
Well, we were not at each other's throats.
Yeah.
We were screaming at each other. That's not necessarily at each other's throats in the heat of the moment. And as soon as we finished rehearsal, we'd go have dinner. And we rehearsed in Vancouver, but most of our rehearsals were out at Sting's Palazzo in Tuscany, Italy, with his 4,000 acres with 5 lakes and 20 chefs. And, it's like a 6-star hotel. I mean, it is another world.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And by day, we're rehearsing and screaming at each other and just like driving each other crazy and remembering why we broke up. And then finally, 6 o'clock rolls around, we roll and have dinner. Now, on the Palazzo, sometimes we would have dinner on the terrace. Sometimes we would have dinner in the grand hall. Sometimes we would have dinner here. Sometimes in the rose garden. So, each one has a completely different set of dishes, flatware, and he's got his chefs and everything. It is a 6-star hotel. And the wine comes out, and I have my tequila shot, and pretty soon we're all laughing. And after dinner, we'd go into the hall, the grand hall, and he'd pull out some guitars, and Andy and Sting would start blasting away on acoustic guitars. And if I'm looking for a drum, Sting immediately, and he hands me his 1932 precision bass or whatever, and that's anything but on drums. Right. So I'm playing bass now, and we're playing various songs and having a great time, enjoying each other's company. As long as I'm not banging shit, we can get along just fine. And I like playing bass, particularly that bass. That's a heck of a bass. And so it was just, we realized that we love each other, we respect each other, admire each other, and get along just fine as long as nobody mentions music.
So you don't miss playing with them, per se?
No. I like his music. I get his records, and I'm still susceptible to his musicality. I love that stuff, but working with him, I love his music. It's him I can't deal with.
So there's no amount of money that could ever get the band back together, you don't think?
It's not, no.
Yeah.
That amount of money you're talking about, we got that for the reunion tour.
Right.
We're done.
Amazing. Talking about a couple of things, I think a lot of people don't touch base on this, but you did a brief stint with The Doors with my buddy Ian Astbury on vocals.
Yes. How is old Ian?
He's great. I actually had dinner with his manager last night, Dino. And
what happened to those guys?
they're playing. They're playing out all the time still. They're playing all over Europe.
But they have another name. They're called something else?
No, The Cult. Still The Cult.
The Doors.
Oh, The Doors. But I'm telling you, Ian is in The Cult still for many years.
The Cult, yeah.
But talking about The Doors and how was that experience for you? I know it was
The
brief.
Doors is, humans are like ducks.
Yep.
And when a duck busts out of its egg, the first warm body it sees is mama. And for humans, the first yell of rebellion, that's your daddy. Right. And for me, that was Jimi Hendrix and, among others, The Doors.
Yeah.
And so they are the band that I kind of look up to. And when I got a call, hey, you want to come play with The Doors? Holy shit. I couldn't believe it. And I'm there on the drums, and there's that, and they play exactly the way they did. And and Ian is a really good replica of Brian. Brian Morrison? No, Jim Morrison.
Jim Morrison, yeah. He did a great job.
He did a pretty good job, yeah. Good job. And he looks just like him, too. That helps.
Yeah.
But I was the wrong guy.
Yeah.
And I'm a frenzy guy. I'm not a trance guy.
Right.
And it just wasn't a good fit. Even though I was such a fan and I'm in trance, I'd get excited and I'd do my thing. Like I say, I got no discipline. I just do what I do. The composer, Stewart, my other self, who composes opera and film scores and such, or completely different guy. Responsible, safe with children. The drummer guy bangs shit and doesn't give a fuck. And so it wasn't a good fit. We parted company. We did 3 or 4 dates and then parted company.
Well, let's talk about the composer in for a minute. When you get a call from Francis Ford Coppola to work on a film, what was that like for you?
Out of the blue, I did get that call. And long story short, I got the gig to compose for his film Rumblefish. And after leaving the hellhole of the police recording, I went over to Marin County, California, and recorded the score. And there I am in a studio by myself, like Clark Kent days. And I do not have to negotiate. I'm not getting put upon. I'm not being told that I'm a piece of shit and that I'm an insult to music. And and there's just no struggle, no strife. I mean, my only collaborator is the director who doesn't know anything about music except for whether it serves his movie or not. And I learned how music and drama are so synergistic. And it was a world of art. And I hadn't had that beautiful sensation of making music and loving it for the entirety of the police experience, 8 years. And it was just such a remedy, such a relief that I realized this is what I want to do.
Mm. Talk to me about a couple of things. At the end of the show, Stuart, we get into like top 5 lists, which are really fun, and people love to debate these lists. So I wanted to ask you, who are your top 5 rock drummers of all time, according to Stewart Copeland, starting with number 5?
I don't know about the order.
In no particular order, then.
In no particular order. Let me throw out some names.
Sure.
Ringo, big deal. Mitch Mitchell's top. Ginger Baker, John Bonham. Those are standard. Everybody
Yep.
loves those.
And why though? What made those drummers?
Well, Ginger Baker because he played his tom-toms a lot.
Yeah.
And that's fun. Mitch Mitchell because he was a jazz guy playing a rock band and he played all the chops. He never stopped. He did not serve the song.
Right.
Because
It's like a drum solo every song.
Yeah, I mean Jimi Hendrix didn't write songs. He wrote opportunities for the band to play. And there was some kind of I don't know what he was singing about. I don't know if he knew what he was singing about, but it's just an excuse for the band to play.
Yeah.
And that's for me what the material, the songs are all about. So that's those two. Buddy Rich, I was raised on Buddy Rich. Joey Jordison, amazing. There's a guy I found on Instagram right now playing in some Mexican wedding band. His name is Pablo Escobar, who has chops beyond even Buddy Rich, even beyond, Slipknot. The kid, some Mexican guy in a cowboy hat.
Wow.
And his clips on Instagram are set off, just locked off on him in his cowboy hat. And he is playing the most unbelievable stuff. And you can see the band in front of him, like a brass section. They're all in uniform with sombreros and everything, and they're playing a wedding or something like that. But I don't even know. Just unbelievable energy and excitement. You never heard of him. Pablo Escobar.
Because there's guys like El Estepari. I don't know if you know him, but he's another guy that's on YouTube that'll blow you away. I mean, I actually want to stop playing when I watch these guys.
There was a guy called Nick Krutman who on Instagram, he would do in his living room, he would do Buddy Rich tracks and nail them.
Grayson.
Grayson,
he's a friend of mine. Yeah, Grayson.
Yeah,
great,
and just like, whoa, what do they feed kids these days?
Yeah,
and then next time I saw him, he's got a gig with Sepultura.
Yeah, exactly. And then that drummer went to Slipknot.
Get out of here.
Yeah.
What do you know?
Yeah, there you go.
But I would say,
Eloy.
I can never remember his name.
Eloy went to Slipknot.
No, I mean.
Grayson is his
Grayson.
name.
I try to remember his name. I'm such a crap name dropper. But that kid's got a future.
Yeah.
There's a few people I see on Instagram who are, who are incredible.
Any thoughts on Taylor Hawkins as a drummer?
Oh, yeah. He was sort of in the John Bonham Ringo Starr school.
Yeah.
Where it wasn't a lot of drum fills and persnickety shit, a lot of chops that you can nick, but it had a momentum, a pump, which really works for me. I can listen to Mick Fleetwood all night. He doesn't play no fancy drum fills, but he has a groove. And I can just lock into that easy peasy. And Taylor was like that.
Yeah, when I was younger, I guess I didn't appreciate.
Dave too, by the way.
Dave's great. Yeah,
Dave got some chops, but mainly he's just throb.
Yeah, when I was younger, I never appreciated how great Charlie Watts was and Ringo Starr. And
oh yeah,
you get older and you realize like these guys were so tasteful and their parts were so integral to the songs.
I've heard on some solo. They now have the technology so they can pull out the drum tracks or the guitar track.
Yeah.
And you can solo Ringo. That fucking guy. There is a throb, a metal, a pump, a power to it that you don't think about because the Beatles are singing their trilly little pop songs over on top of it. But the guy just had a macho thing that you don't expect until you hear it on its own. You go, fuck, that guy was a motherfucker.
Definitely.
And there are some people like that are Mick Fleetwood I would put in that category as well.
Is there a perfect album for Stewart Copeland? Any kind of genre we can get into? I guess we can go rock if you want.
Well, my next album.
We'll talk about that.
It's not out until April. There's one track out there. I came across a collection of animal sounds, bird sounds mainly, of this naturalist who's recorded 10,000 sounds. And he sent them to me. He said, anything you can do with this musically? Why, yes. So I've been cutting found sound, starting with Rumblefish in my trips to Africa where I record stuff and then I cut them up as samples. And I created this album, which is an orchestra with the top line is all these different birds, the red-breasted nuthatch and
single white-throated sparrow.
There you go. Is happy on the glacier. Right. And then one track in the Arctic, there's these wolves howling, and those are some Coltrane wolves. They just are yodeling with this great melodic, and you put a trombone next to them, and to pick out the melody of what they're doing, and the wolf is pitchless, but you put the trombone next to it, and it bestows pitch upon the wolf howl in a very interesting kind of way. And then I've got a big-ass orchestra. I recorded it at Abbey Road Studios in London, and it's an orchestral album animal album, and it's called Wild Concerto. And there's one single out now.
And the record comes out April 18th.
Yes, that's right, on Earth Day.
That's a perfect record for Stewart Copeland.
Well, I'm banging shit, and I'm doing my orchestral stuff, which, the film music, starting with Francis Coppola, got me into orchestra. And I don't do film music anymore, by the way. I retired from that 15, 20 years ago. I do opera, which is a total conversation stopper. What? You're supposed to be banging shit. What are you doing writing? Well, I drank the Kool-Aid. I love it. It's the synergy. It's the same job as film composing, which is the synergy between drama and music, and you tell a dramatic story with the music as the main impetus. But unlike Hollywood movies, in opera, the composer is boss of everything, which suits me because I enjoyed the art of film composing. I enjoyed working with directors and just being supportive of the film. One of the film composer is not an artist; he's a craftsman, and I love the work, but hated the business. The business drove me nuts. And so I do the same work, which is opera, without Jeffrey Katzenberg and the Rat Kingdom
breathing down your neck,
breathing down my neck.
Yeah.
And it's the business model is to lose money. Right. You do things just because they're cool for a very rarefied audience, and that suits me fine. And I enjoy composing. And this composing brings me back to my beloved Stingo, and I understand fully. When he writes a song, problem is he's in a medium. He's playing rock music, and doesn't work. In opera or orchestral music, I write the piece, I orchestrate it. Not just the notes that they play, but how shall they play them? The nuance. It's not da 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 da. It's da 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 da. All of that, which Sting would love to instruct me into these nuances of how to play a fucking rock song. Wrong venue, buddy. But I do understand the obsessive desire to control every nuance of every instrument. And as an orchestral composer, you get to do that. And the orcs, those orchestral musicians, they live for that. They live to faithfully reproduce what they see on the page. If there's a little accent, that they want to play that accent. If there's a little crescendo or anything that's, you put as much information as you can on the page to tell them how exactly to shape the music and how to play it. They live for that. They're very obedient. They are the opposite of me.
I've heard you say that to rehearse for those, it takes 2 hours, and the reunion with the Police was like 4 months of rehearsal, right?
There you go. There you go. To play such simple music.
Because it's on the page.
And by the way, those same songs that took the Police, who invented them,
4 months.
Yeah. I show up with the Atlantic Symphony. How y'all guys doing? Nice to meet you all. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. Rehearse for 2.5 hours, play the show that night.
Incredible.
And that's because it's on the page. And they live to play exactly what's on the page. I know what I'm doing. And I bring, Armand Sabal-Lecco on bass, and I bring my 3 beautiful singers, soul sisters on the mic, to sing the songs. And I never realized what the songs are about until I had to orchestrate and figure out the harmonies and work out the vocal parts. Oh, that's what the song's about. Cool. Because, as I've said before, I don't know what the songs are about. All I ever see is the back of his head. If I see the front of his head, it's probably because he's yelling at me.
Yeah. If you play with some incredible musicians, Stewart, if you were to form a supergroup of anyone that could be in the band, who would be in the band and what would they be playing?
Chrissy Hine on vocals.
Great one.
Armand is my bass player. Just him and I. We don't need anybody else. Rusty Anderson on guitar. He plays with Paul McCartney.
Great band, by the way.
Yeah. And he also plays my shows. Those are just my favorite personal cats. But that's probably not the question you were asking.
No,
which famous people?
Well, would you have another drummer in the band too? Would it just be you?
I would have a percussionist. Mauro Rafosco would be good.
Okay.
Who's playing with David Byrne's show.
Sure.
Let's see, other guy, if I'm not using my guy, maybe Tim Comerford on bass. I mean, I just love and Brad Wilk. I just love the Rage rhythm section.
Yeah, amazing.
That is
incredible.
I don't care who they got at the front of the stage. Those guys and Tommy, you know, Tim, Tom, and Brad. That is a band. Oh, I don't care
Great
who's
band.
shouting at the front of the band.
Yeah. You're like a metal guy. People don't know that, right?
Oh,
You
yeah,
love
yeah,
Slipknot
absolutely.
and Rage and all these
Yeah,
bands.
yeah. You know, for some reason, extremely aggressive, hostile music cheers me up. It just makes me smile when I hear the youngsters all pissed off about something. I don't care, but I do enjoy anger in music. I find it comedic. I don't know. I don't want to be disrespectful, but I just really love, and I saw Slipknot for the first time at a
intense.
At Tattoo the Earth Festival, and I was there actually hanging with Sepultura, and I was going to produce a track. I was hanging out with them, and they said, "You got to check out this band Slipknot." Okay, boy, did that blow my mind. Joey Jordison on the drums.
Incredible
He was
drummer.
doing things with his feet that I aspire to with my hands.
Oh my God, so much to get into. But April 18th, the record's out.
Yep.
The speaking tour is, I think, March 5th kicks off, right? So you're doing spoken word about the police and telling some stories. And
That is a one-off date up in Livermore, California, Livermore. But in England, I did this last fall over a few weeks, and all I do is I sit in a chair and tell stories. And wow, that's easy. And I can go 5 nights in a row.
no drum set.
And then no drum set, no 2 hours rehearsal with an orchestra.
Yeah.
And I don't need a shower after the show. And it's just easy peasy. And I talk and I get laughs and I kind of enjoy it because it's fun to entertain a crowd by whatever means. And I have a newfound respect for Chris Rock and stand-up comedians. And it's a lot of fun.
Does the audience participate in this? Are there questions that they ask?
Yeah, there's a question and answer period, which is some of the most fun stuff.
Yeah.
But they participate by laughing at my jokes, which makes me feel good. And there's an interaction there. And I've learned. I thought it would be a problem telling the same stories over and over again. I thought it's gonna get old. When you tell the same joke, too many times you kind of lose the timing or something. It just somehow doesn't work anymore. But in fact, I enjoyed honing it and getting it more tweaked and where to put the little pause. And, I enjoy it. I look forward to I'm going to do another big English tour next fall. And I'm just testing the waters here in America with one show up in Livermore.
Were you so busy? Any other projects coming up besides the record coming out and the tour and whatnot? Well,
I'm working on my opera, the next one, and I can't divulge its name because it's a bit of a gasp. But I'm just superstitious about talking about things before they reach fruition. But that is my answer to your question is the same 6 months ago, working on this opera. We'll talk in 6 months from now. So what are you working on? Still working on that because it takes that long to do 2 hours of music and working the drama out. There's, I've discovered that I like big missions because I'm confident that I will finish them. Writing a song, okay, that takes an afternoon. But I'm ready to spend 2 years writing a piece because I discovered that the journey, in fact, is the purpose of the mission. The destination isn't the purpose. The journey is the purpose. And I just love doing it. It's how I enjoy spending my day. And then when I'll finish it and it'll play somewhere fancy and I'll sit in the audience and watch other people do it, which can go either very well or sometimes I'm in the fetal position while my work gets destroyed, But mostly I enjoy it. But I'm already on to the next one. I don't care. When I finish it and hand it over, same with the record, by the way. I never listen to old records.
Never.
I don't know why, but you're obsessed with it. I listen to it too much while I'm making it.
Right.
I listen to it and listen to it and listen to it, and looking for things to fix. And then the minute it's delivered, I don't want to hear it anymore.
Wow. As a fellow drummer, this is such a pleasure. I really, really appreciate you coming in today.
Ah, shucks.
There'll be a part 2, I hope, coming up.
Sure.
I appreciate it, Stewart. Thank you
All
so
right.
much.
Thanks for letting me
Awesome.
out.